Hey, this is Brian,
And Shelby.
and you're listening to the Hyperspace.
Pod Blast. Aren't you a little short for a podcast?
Huh?
Hello and welcome to the Star Wars Actors Guild celebration of actors in Star Wars.
You're getting played off.
Oh, okay. Thought that was like a reference to something. I just didn't know what it
I was
was.
just doing things.
This is
Anyway,
bad.
yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Opening accomplished. So, if you didn't pick up on it from that horribleness, we're going to talk about the role of actors in Star Wars. And yes, that is pun intended. Thought about that one really hard.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm sure you did.
I did. So anyway, yeah, Star Wars isn't real.
Blasphemy. To the Rancor pit.
Yeah, I would love to. We would be best friends. But yeah, it's not real. Sorry, everyone out there. It was like, parents told them that Star Wars, the Tooth Fairy, and Santa are all real.
Only Jedi are real.
Yeah. Yes, true. But yeah, it's all played by actors playing characters. So what we're going to talk about today is what difference the type of actor makes when you're kind of watching something and trying to get into that character, if that makes sense.
Oh, it does.
Does it?
It does.
Good. So let's start at the start with the regular, original, no-frills Star Wars trilogy.
No frills.
So it was a group of mostly unknown actors at the helm with some fairly well-known supports. Like you had Alec Guinness, Peter Cushing, and James Earl Jones, which, some people kind of forget that he's actually in it. We'll get to that whole voice being different than seeing someone later. But do you think it was this ability to see these new actors as these characters that helped the story become so endearing, or was it the story itself and they could have put whoever, David Hasselhoff could have played Luke Skywalker and it would have been fine?
Oh my gosh. Now that is an imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I think it absolutely played a part in Star Wars being a hit, because if you have unknown actors or lesser known actors within the original trilogy, it allows the audience to put themselves in that place. I think that the number one thing that made Star Wars a hit was that Luke was someone everyone could see themselves in.
That's a good point, yeah.
No one can see themselves as like Tom Cruise.
Right. I was going to bring that up because we just watched Edge of Tomorrow recently, which is fantastic.
I know, completely underrated movie.
Very, definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it. But the whole time we're watching it, I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm watching Tom Cruise play a part.
Yeah.
You can't divorce yourself from that. Like, Tom Cruise is too big. He's great. He's a little whack job nowadays, but I mean, he's fantastic actor.
But he's still Tom Cruise.
Yeah, he's always Tom Cruise. It doesn't matter who he's playing, he's Tom Cruise. There are a couple really well-known, like Gary Oldman, for example.
Yeah.
That guy, I've found out, sometimes days later, oh, that was him? I had no idea. But that doesn't happen very often.
I think Christian Bale does a good job at that, too.
Yeah, he did. Anymore, with Batman, it was fantastic. But, hey, it's Christian Bale as Batman. That's cool. It is what it is. And, I guess kind of what we're saying, too, is it doesn't necessarily detract from a story. But, in that instance, you have Batman. Everyone knows Batman.
That's established.
Yeah, Batman's
with
a lot of things.
With a story that's not established like Star Wars,
Exactly.
You needed somebody like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think coming out with this crazy space wizard opera, I don't know, just...
Because otherwise everyone would have been like, what is that big name actor doing?
Yeah, exactly. Man, I wonder how much money you got to play this crazy part. But at the same time, like we said, you have, Peter Cushing and Alec Guinness are pretty, revered fellas. It was kind of weird for them to be in it, but they made it work.
It all goes back to, I think, the magic of the original trilogy was the lower budget.
True, yeah.
When you don't have as much money to throw at something, it forces you to be more creative, and therefore you get a better story.
I can't argue with that one bit.
Having the confines, specifically, the confines here are money.
Mm-hmm.
In other situations, you get a good story because the confines are either confines of the story itself or just feasibility of doing something, the technology even.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's kind of what George was fighting with, or maybe not.
He was fighting it
with.
in both ways. The technology to do what he had in his mind, I think, and then also the funding.
Mm-hmm. And then in the prequels, which was what I was going to say, is he kind of has the opposite. He's like, I want to do this. They're like, we can't do that. And he's like, we'll figure out how. Just starts throwing money
just
at it.
do it.
But yeah, we'll get to the prequels in a minute. I think, yeah, for sure. I don't think I can see other people. And maybe this is, it's easy to say this from the point we are now, 40 plus years from when it started. Like, there's no way other people could have played those parts. Well, they could have, but would it have been the same? That's, was it lightning in a bottle, or was this story going to work no matter who stepped in there?
My final vote is no. I think that it wouldn't have worked if you had somebody that everyone kind of knew from other roles.
Yeah,
Luke
I wonder.
needed to be like that person you could see yourself in. That's like where I...
That's your line in the sand?
Yes.
It's a good line. It makes really good sense. I wonder now, because of, how pop culture-y nerd stuff has become, would that have happened sooner? Maybe if someone popular at the time, and I wasn't alive in 1977, I don't know who the popular person would have been. But if they had taken up this role, would that rise of geek culture or geek chic, whatever you want to call it, would it have started earlier? Or was it the unknowns that kind of left the people that go to the movies for the people on the poster out?
It could have, but I also think, I don't know, I'm not sure if people would have been ready for the weirdness.
That's true.
Because you've had, how many sci-fi movies, even after Star Wars, have there been with bigger name people, and no one went to see them? No one really bought into it that much.
Well,
I think it's been a renaissance of, specifically Big Bang Theory and stuff like that, where it's like...
It's been a slow burn to make things cool.
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It also comes from that whole idea of I like things that are not mainstream, which there's many things that are not mainstream.
Hipsters.
There's many things that are not mainstream, and geekdom was one of those things. And it's not anymore, and I think that does put those people who've always been interested in those sorts of topics in a really weird position.
That's true. It is weird to go from having been on the outside to now on the inside, but you still kind of feel like an outsider. I don't know. It's weird. Doesn't bother me, but
right.
I can see how it'd be strange for some people. But a sort of opposite example of this is Valerian. It had two relatively unknown actors, I think. I didn't know them, but maybe I'm a bad example. I don't really pay attention to that stuff. But I don't remember anybody big name being in it. And it flopped. We really liked it, but it flopped pretty hard. So what if Star Wars would have taken that kind of turn? And then everyone would have been saying, well, it would have been great if you got David Hasselhoff. I don't know why I keep bringing him up.
It's because you love him.
I am German.
You wanted someone running on the beach of Scarif.
That would have been just like, oh man, someone that's good at Photoshop, etc., needs to do that. Yeah. Put Hasselhoff running alongside everyone on Scarif. Oh, geez. Okay, so I think we've...
I'm the lifeguard.
Yeah, I'm the lifeguard. Oh my gosh. That's terrific.
You're welcome.
Oh, that's the best part of the episode. You guys can quit listening now. Whatever we talk about after that won't be as good.
I've peaked.
Just kidding. Don't do that. But yeah, I think it's impossible to say, obviously, but I think we've decided that they did the right thing, leaving it up to unknowns for us to fill in these characters with these new faces.
I agree.
Was a good decision.
So what do you think about the prequels? We kind of touched on that. There are more big names involved, but a lot of people criticize it for very wooden acting. Do you think that the casting choices made an impact, or no?
I don't know. On one hand, I think, these are, air quotes here, better actors. Just because you're getting more gigs doesn't necessarily mean you're better, but blah, blah, blah. For the purposes of argument, I might say better. Don't get offended if you're an actress.
More employed.
Yeah, more employed. More practiced. But anyway, maybe the problem was that they were used to acting with stuff, props, etc. So they threw these people that have been doing this for a while into this green room of nothing. And they're like, okay, action. But what do I feel like I'm in someone's really weird house. What do I do? maybe it would have been better if they'd picked more unknown-y type people to throw into this unknown situation.
I don't know. I think that's why it wasn't like a terrible flop.
You think that's what saved it from being utter disaster?
Because I think that if you had thrown people in there who didn't have as much experience, it would have just been terrible. Because I think that challenged actors more than anything. They were the first actors to do things like that, considering it was the first time that they pushed those bounds of technology. So I think that that's what saved them. And it was a pioneer film in the sense that no one had asked actors to do things like that.
That's true.
Before.
And nowadays it's kind of like taken
you
for
just
granted,
have to, you have to know how to do that kind of thing. But I think that having these actors who knew what they were doing is what kind of saved it and gave it those moments that are really good.
So it's more of a fish out of water flopping right next to the edge instead of maybe taking a fish out of water and blasting him into space, which would have been like something if they were
Space
brand
fish.
new. Purgles?
Or Akbar, I don't know.
Okay, fair. Someone should also draw a picture of Akbar riding a Purgle.
Oh my goodness.
We have so many good ideas.
That's a great idea.
We have so many ideas. But yeah, I don't know. I guess they kind of took, because I don't think Hayden Christensen was really anybody when he was in episode 2. And I think Anakin was brand new. I don't know if he did anything after or before. I think that was kind of a young Anakin, obviously, because Hayden was Anakin too. But
lots of Anakins.
Yeah. That's funny. They talk about all the time how Harrison Ford and Alden Ehrenreich are playing the same character, and you have Obi-Wan being played by two different people. But the Anakin thing never comes up. I guess just because it's taken for granted because that's how it happened. I don't know. But anyway, I guess they had a mix, but definitely more well-known people.
Well, you had the Star Wars name at this point.
That's true. And I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine anyone being Obi-Wan except for Ewan McGregor. And what about Qui-Gon? Do you think if it had been no one that people would have, I don't know, cared about that character? Because he was kind of here and gone.
Oh, I think so. I think the way he's written is just, that would stick with you forever.
Yeah, it's not necessarily Liam Neeson's portrayal, but it's the character
It would
itself.
have had to have been acted as well as he did.
Yeah, I just think he destroyed that part.
Even though there are moments where you're just like, ugh, but...
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, moments in the writing, yeah. But, the actors do their best. But I don't know, man. When he delivered that whole thing about midichlorians, I was like, yeah... Blood bugs. Makes perfect sense. I mean,
absolutely, duh.
And
Why didn't I see it before? It was so obvious.
I wasn't that familiar with Liam Neeson's work, so maybe that, I don't know. In hindsight, he's a bigger named actor, but at the time, I didn't really know him. So I guess that's a bad example now that I think about it. Yeah. Now that we have new Star Wars, though. They are signing up all kinds of at least well-known, maybe not big name. We haven't had that Tom Cruise moment yet, but there are some people...
Okay, so really quick, if Tom Cruise was in Star Wars, who would you want him to be? Or would you just be like, get out of here?
I don't know. I don't think I could take that seriously. I would be like, really, though? Really?
I want him to be a Hutt.
Just be the voice?
Yes. Tom Cruise as the new mob boss.
All right. It'd be better than...
You heard it here first. When it happens, everyone.
Be better than Zero. Just saying.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, big names. Star Wars. I think... For sure, Solo. I mean, Ehrenreich's been in a couple things. He wasn't that big, but, I mean, Childish Gambino, he's pretty well known.
Yeah.
Mother of Dragons, extremely well known.
Yeah. I feel like that was the draw, and I think that's what they were trying to bank on with Solo, considering it's a spin-off rather than a saga.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they might try and use that as the ploy to get people into spin-off films.
Well, you might be right, because Rogue One was full of a bunch of big deals, too. So, and definitely more so than the two saga films so far.
They need to do some sort of, box office draw
for
those, which I understand why.
They have brought in some bigger names obviously, but it's sort of more along the lines of the original trilogy, I think, where your main group, like, I think Daisy Ridley was new, wasn't she?
Yeah, the main group, and I feel like that's what you need. You need the main group to not be associated with, like, other roles in your mind. But I think that, ancillary characters can definitely be larger name actors.
Right. What do you think about Mr. Kylo Ren?
There's a lot of things I think about Kylo Ren.
But specifically, let's talk about Adam Driver. If Kylo Ren is played by someone else, is he as popular a character?
Nope.
I don't think so either. I really don't. I think Kylo Ren has some interesting qualities, but with 2 movies and no wrap up yet, it's hard to really see much in that character for me. He's a little empty, he's almost
so interesting because it feels like he's both very complex but also very empty at the same time.
Right, it's so weird.
Like there are times I'm like, oh, he's such a complex villain, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and then I'm like, when I kind of dig deeper into his motivations and everything, I'm like, what is there to really look at?
That's what I've been thinking about lately is why is he even doing this? Like,
because one time Luke was upset with him or scared of him just once.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's something where you can let it go.
And are they trying to say that evil is just brewing in him and he can't stop it? Because it also seems like
it's a very anti-Star Wars conversation, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It seems like he's a good person and he's trying to be bad. But the reason he's trying to be bad is a really, like,
not
flimsy reason. I don't know. But Adam Driver kills that character.
Yeah, I think that's why he sells it. He sells it in a way that I don't think anyone else could. He was like the most perfect pick for that that character, and I think that's why we like him or hate him or both.
Yeah, why we're intrigued, regardless of what end of the spectrum you're on.
Right. I just don't think that character holds so much water unless you have someone behind it who really can progress it. And you're captivated by the way that he plays Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. It comes down to the actor for that character in particular.
Yeah. I think in general, we've had the strongest acting in Star Wars in these most recent Disney era, whatever you want to call it, films.
I'd agree with that.
I think it's really hard to argue otherwise. Not that the other ones were necessarily bad.
Well, everything kind of beats out the prequels.
Yeah.
Just because that was such an uphill battle. I'm not trying to say the prequels were bad. I'm just trying to say that to ask actors to do what they were doing is a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we couldn't do it. We're not saying we could have done it better or anything like that. It's just, that's what criticism is from the Monday morning quarterback, so to speak. It is what it is. But yeah, I think for sure, if I had to rank the acting, it would be the new movies would be some version of 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know exactly what it would be, though. Though I will say that little Anakin's chopped up and on fire and Obi-Wan dialogue piece is one of the best things in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's funny to compare that to like what our favorite scenes are. Because I think a lot of times favorite scenes come down to how well they're acted.
Well, absolutely. I mean, unless it's some sort of battle scene, then it's how well it's choreographed. But it's all about how it's put together.
But, I mean, choreography is also...
It's a type of acting. Art acting.
You have to sell it while also not killing somebody.
Computer-generated acting. All right, so last but not least, there are other types of actors in Star Wars, and those, so far, I mean, there will be TV actors live action, but we haven't got to that point yet. So for right now, all we have is voice acting. So what kind of difference do you think that makes when it's just a voice and there's not a face that goes along with the voice?
I think that helps, unless it's someone's voice that's so unique.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that helps. I think that you can have bigger names, and it really makes no difference.
Especially because a lot of times they're not actually using their real voice.
Right.
So in that instance, maybe you don't even know who it is. You just hear the voice and, oh, that voice is this character.
Mm-hmm.
Hondo is very much like that, except that that guy does some voice acting, at least in World of Warcraft that I know of. And I hear it and I'm always like, why is Hondo here? This is weird.
Yeah.
So I guess it can be a different sort of, but I think if
they're also trained differently.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. Yeah. So it's a whole different ball game, really, especially depending on how they record. Because I know some animation, the people record their lines
together, and then some by
some
themselves.
of them are just like one at a time. All right, you go first. Now you add your... I know they do anime dubs that way, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just very much people speaking lines. But I think Star Wars has been great. Star Wars animation, it's hard to complain about any of the acting that we've had in either, I guess, of the series so far. And it looks like the new series is really pretty well stacked with some good talent. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that one. But what about when we do things like Saw, where he went from animation to live action, and it wasn't the person who originally did the voice? I mean, in this instance, it's kind of easier transition, I think, because so much time passed between when he was animated and when we saw him.
Yeah.
But then when he came back to animation, it was the same voice.
I think that's good.
Do you think that's important? Or...
I do. I think once you've had someone in film, you kind of have to keep that same voice.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's, I don't know, I find it more consistent. But I mean, there are times where you have someone who is older now and you're trying to portray them younger.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely acceptable to be switching actors and that sort of thing.
What about bringing James Earl Jones in for Vader's voice? Do you think that was...
I'm into it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone could have pulled that off correctly or not.
Well, that's so iconic
Mm-hmm.
at this point.
Exactly.
Because
Which
it's
is
such
interesting.
a huge character.
Yeah.
You can't change it and then it'd be weird, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I never think of it being James Earl Jones. But if it wasn't, it would be weird.
That's why it's always like, it's so interesting because you hear Leia sometimes younger and you're like, oh, that's...
Yeah, I think Leia's been voiced by a couple different people. I think she was
has.
someone in
There's
Rebels.
Shelby Young for
then-
Forces of Destiny.
Yeah, someone else.
She did a good job.
Mm-hmm. I think they've all been fairly good. I've never really... And I guess in Forces of Destiny and, well, Rebels, because they like to bring in lots of people. But they've all been at least... I don't
Passable.
know. Yeah, for
like,
sure.
Believable. You gotta make me believe that this is who this is. So
Mhm.
there's like, it's less about the voice itself, but more about the inflections and just the way,
Right, and
the
kind of-
delivery.
Kind of like what we were saying with Alden playing Han Solo.
You don't need to try and sound like him,
Right, because you're playing Han Solo.
not Harrison
Yeah,
Ford.
so many people are hung up on that. And I guess the voice is the same thing. You're just trying to get that manner of speaking, that, I don't know, tone, that banter, that rhythm.
Mhm.
It's more important than sounding exactly like the person.
Otherwise, it's just a bad impression of someone trying
Right,
to be a
yeah,
character.
exactly. Is that what you really want, is an impression, or do you want someone to be the character as well? Because they're all just characters. I mean, they don't belong to any
Yeah, we always make
particular
the
actor.
argument that there are some actors that are just absolutely linked, but I think it's okay to challenge that.
Mhm. Definitely via voice.
With something that is as big as Star Wars, you're going to have to.
Yeah, that's what I'm, so curious about number 9 here. So one of like 50 million things I'm curious about, but just what's going to be the fate of Leia? Yeah, it's going to be interesting. What
So-
would be neat is if they did something where she was in the movie, but she's not seen, and they do use someone else as a voice, just to
I don't
say
know.
a couple lines,
I don't know.
and then she gets blown up or something. I don't
Oh,
know.
that sounds...
I know it's terrible to think
great.
about, but
So what do you think about the future of actors in Star Wars? Should they keep going after bigger, more accomplished, so to speak, actors, or should they aim to introduce new talent and act out the adventures of those to come from a galaxy far, far away?
I would say just keep doing what they're doing. It'll be interesting with these 2 new trilogies that we have that are rumored to be not connected to the saga at all. So it's going to be a set of standalone films that stand alone as a trilogy instead of standing alone as a one-shot sort of movie, so to speak, I guess. So I wonder if they'll go with the bigger names that they've been doing with the standalones, like you said, or if they'll have a mix more like they did with 7, 8, or if they'll just, I don't know, do all unknown people.
I highly doubt that.
Crazily.
I think that they're going to do a
individual.
mix,
I'm
and I
sure
think
they
that's
will.
good. I
That
just
makes
don't like
sense.
those people who are just... I don't know, like if someone was like, Meryl Streep's going to be in Star Wars. I mean, I love Meryl Streep. I'm a huge Meryl Streep fan, but I would also be like,
Yeah. I think at some point you do become too big to be in something, especially that's ongoing like this.
because you can't count on them to be there.
Right. Yeah. And, maybe they decide not to, and then you end up with Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, and Clooney all playing the same Batman. Oh man, those movies got really bad. But yeah, it's interesting. I think for sure actors make a big difference in how we perceive these characters. So they do have to make smart choices. But in the end, I think I'm with you. And as long as they don't overreach, it's probably going to be fine. And they can, I think, like we said with Kylo Ren, take a character that's kind of iffy and make something out of them by putting someone behind the character that's just going to act the ever-living crap out of it.
I agree. So,
yeah, that's it.
Tell us what you guys think. Are actors absolutely linked to the success of Star Wars, or not so much?
Yeah, was this all for naught? Does it not matter at all?
Let us know on Twitter at hyperspace_pod.
Send us an email at hyperspacepodblast@gmail.com.
And as always, be sure to check out our content on hyperspacepodblast.com.
And that's it. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
Bye, guys!